left, right, out. What's going on? So the big news to me is not the Maxwell case. It's not the Duggar case or whatever the heck's going on there. It's actually in the financial markets. We've Evergrande, the Chinese mega company over there, the real estate company, is finally, they're defaulting. All right, it's happening, and we don't know what the ramifications of that exactly are. But I would imagine it's going to be systemic over there. The Chinese government's going to probably end up coming to the rescue of some sort, distorting their markets even greater than they already are. It's a big distortion over there. There's another company that's along with them as well, another real estate type company. But they've defaulted on a number of foreign bonds. Like I said, they prioritized in the past. They prioritized payments, but they officially defaulted. And we will see what happens. But anyway, I look at the markets too. This is the bond market. 10 years. It's bouncing around like you wouldn't believe it. We're back up about 1.5, but it was down in the 1.3s, which I could not believe, because we were just at 1.6 something just a couple weeks ago. And of course, you had a huge sell-off. We had a nice pullback, and then pretty much made all that back up, and now we're kind of flat on the day-to-day, or maybe a little bit down. But it's interesting price action now. We're starting to see a little bit of fear come into the fold. But and then you go into Omicron, which people were saying that is what was causing the market to go down, as the fears of that, maybe a little bit, but I think it's the Fed. So here's the thing about what was going on. So there's some testimony not too long ago with Powell and Yellen, which that is precarious in itself. I have no idea why the Treasury Secretary and the Federal Reserve Chair are testifying together. They're two independent entities. They shouldn't be on the same page. The Fed should be, theoretically, if you went through what it was supposed to be, it should be checks. It should be checking the Treasury Department on a lot of things, but it's not. They're working in concert with the government, essentially, which we already knew that. We know they're a pseudo, in my opinion, branch, if not like a large organized crime group. But so they're testifying, and it's amazing the misunderstanding of a few basic economic concepts, even with the smartest people. But let's just go into what they were talking about with the debt ceiling, because that is debt ceiling. We know it's going to get raised. It's a superficial mechanism. I don't even know why they have it anymore if we're just going to not abide by it. A rule should be a rule. Granted, I want a budget, but why even have this thing if it's just like used as some kind of mechanism and it always gets raised? It's nothing. But I believe it was Yellen. They were saying that they have to raise it so they can pay their bills, and I was like, well, to me it's like, okay, so we got to open another credit card to pay off the existing credit cards so that we have a larger balance overall. But we paid these. I just default already. So that's the way I look at it. I think the majority of Americans look at it that way. That is asinine thinking. It doesn't even make any sense that you have to raise more debt to pay the existing debt, and somehow that's good, and not just playing, kicking whatever can down the road. Like, let's just fess up to what we have going on. Take the pain pill right now. We could have done it years ago, but I guess we wanted a little bit more pain. Do it and get it over with. But that's not how we do things. We're not taking the responsibility for any of these actions over the years of what we've done financially on the fiscal side of things, monetarily. Christmas. They're the enablers. So if we're at a bar, the guy that's getting the fiscal side drunk is the Jerome Powells of the world, is the Ben Bernanke's, Janet Yellen. There you go. They're the ones that are pouring the shots, getting them drunk. So that's a whole. I'm always on that issue. Like, hey, the Fed's is probably the largest or the most corrupt institution, or the most more like an organized crime unit, or so is government. But the Fed, being a private entity run by the banks, pseudo regulated by the government in some form or fashion. The fact that they can appoint some people into the Fed. But overall, it's operated by its member banks. But we look at those entities that I mean, now I'm off on a little bit, but anyway, it's just weird that they're testifying together. Powell's talking about losing the term transitory. We talked about that before, and that transitory, which they have a fundamental misunderstanding of inflation to begin with, but rising prices. Now we could see rising and crashing prices. That's just part of it. It's a dysfunction in the market, and we see that all over the place. I mean, the other day I went into a Walmart and there was no butter. Like, what in the world is going on? I mean, there's less of things there. It's interesting, but we're all lulled into a certain train of thought that seems to be okay now. I don't get it. I don't get how the American public is just rolling over on this. I guess as long as they can eat, even if it's more expensive. I mean, but we'll see, because usually in a society, you get to a certain point where the amount of somebody's income is taken up by basic necessities. Then you usually have some sort of revolution, some sort of physical clash between the government and the people. So it's going to be one of those things that's going to play out before our very eyes, and we never thought. So if you're growing up in my generation or past ones in the old America, you would have never thought we'd come to this point. You'd have never thought it'd be this bad. But I'll keep going back to the point that we can blame the other generations. My generation has kind of woken up. I mean, a lot of people like to blame us, and there is definitely some blame there, but we have woken up. We're the first generation we're kind of the ones that are destroying the corporate media, that are looking for those alternative things. Granted, there's a lot of people that they like to show us that are in, like, I don't know how many different gender types there is. That's incredible too. But for the most part, the people that are keeping the old media alive are still the older generation. They still have this like Walter Cronkite view of what they're being told. But okay, last thing, Ghislaine Maxwell trial. I said I'm not really paying attention to that because I think everything that's out there is already out there, and you're not going to learn anything new from the trial. I doubt it, because I doubt they're going to let anything loose on that. I think and it looks like the charge they were doing some twisted stuff on that island, and we know that. And what is being presented in the trial is like scratching, like a little scratch of the surface of what the honeypot situation was going on over there. And you'll never hear probably about the severely underage, I won't even mention ages, kids that were being tortured and used to put various leaders in precarious situations, and for whatever ritual deals that they were doing there. It's pretty crazy when you hear some of the stories. So that's all scrubbed from various people. I don't know, you can draw your own agendas or conspiracy theories about it, but you just know that this thing's happening. Somebody, something, or some conglomerate of people, whether it be from some directive or just aligning political objectives or whatever the case may be, is withholding some of this information. Oh, the other thing is the Pfizer documents. They're released, so roughly 50 pages, I think. Maybe it's between 30 and 50 pages. I've gone through a lot of them, and it's astounding the lack of basic scientific data. Like their adverse reactions that they were getting. They weren't really soliciting them. They weren't really necessarily looking at them according to what it looks like in the documents. They were just taking them in from various practitioners and then individuals. There's some alarming stuff that was happening, and the FDA themselves, you could see in some of the writing, we're pretty much saying they need to clean up the data. We need to figure out why didn't you ask these questions? Some of the data is grouped pretty, I would say ominous, but it's just weird that they group the data in certain ways. They're not asked certain questions or they're drawing certain conclusions from some of the data if you look at it. And I don't want to point any of that out so I don't get flagged or whatnot, but you can look at it yourself. Those documents are out there, a little harder to find, but you can find them. Like if you Google search it, good luck. I know there's people I had to link the papers to and send over Facebook or whatever, so they can actually see them. Because I mean, it was a FOIA request that got these documents released, and they're, you know, I guess the presumed thing is that they want 75 years to release all these documents. It sounds insane that it took them, you know, maybe a month or however long, because this is February, you know, when this thing was given to the FDA. But it took them however long to look at all this stuff to determine a course of action with regards to the vaccine. But they want 77 years to release the data itself. It's like, this is one of the greatest public health crises that we've ever seen. However you hash it out, whether you agree with whatever various political agendas, and to say that that's going to take 77 years is like the JFK thing. It's like, well, what do you want us to find? Like, let's get these slow releases. Oh, look at all this information that we were lied to about. So that's what it feels like. But anyway, in those documents, there's some interesting things. I always was under presumption that the majority of the adverse reaction were male driven, and you see that in some of the athlete stuff. You see that in, you know, the age 30, you know, I'd say, you know, early adulthood to middle-aged men with the myocarditis and pericarditis. I always assumed that it was mainly that, but from their reporting, and there could be, since it's not scientific data, they were just collecting it haphazardly because it doesn't seem like they care. They knew this was like a foregone conclusion. That's what I get. It's like the board of Pfizer, who, yeah, they're an American company, but they're in league with BioNTech. They operate as though they're an international company. If you ask anybody that's dealt with any of the board members or any of the high-ranking Pfizer officials that are like actually the big guys, they have their own like foreign policy. They have their own agendas, and they're not necessarily aligned with America. Let's just put it that way. So anyway, but if these guys seemed like it was a foregone conclusion, it seemed like they weren't gathering proper scientific data, even if you were just like, okay, we need this out, but it'd be interesting. We need to catch this data. We need to look for these adverse effects. We need to figure out what's going on. But anyway, the majority of the people that out of the 42-some thousand in that initial report, they were more females than males, which was interesting to me, because I was under the presumption that it was more of a males were more susceptible to the adverse side effects. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I know that was very wave toppy on that, but you can go look up this stuff. Like I said, Google's really hard to find the FOIA documents. There's some guys that posted, like I said, posted some on Facebook, because you have to go dig for the link. Because if you Google anything with regard to vaccine, you're just going to get all this propaganda. That, you know, the algorithms pop up. Well, maybe it's propaganda in the sense that they're pushing an agenda, not necessarily that all the data, everything they say is wrong. It's just, it's specifically tailored to a certain point of view. So even if you were, let's say I wanted to go get vaccinated and I just had questions, I want to know the risk factors, like legitimately. So I want to get both sides of the coin. I want to hear both opinions. Well, if you Google it, you're just going to get one side. So it's like, oh, this is great. And it's not really giving you all the information that so you can make an informed decision. But anyway, you can find it. Anyway, peace.